before I start, let me ask you one question, or actually two. How many of you have actually identified a number that once you reach that number, you feel like you're financially free? That's your wealth, that you feel like you can do whatever you want. Raise your hand. You have identified your number. If I ask you, you don't have to say it, but you know which number is it you need to reach, okay? Only a few of you. All right. That is interesting. We're going to talk about that a little bit. How many of you actually have ever felt trapped in your job, or maybe it's your own business and you've spent a lot of time and effort in it, but you feel trapped. You feel like you can't let it go right now. You're like stuck in it. You have to stick to it because you have to achieve a financial goal. How many? Raise your hand. Only a few. All right. The others may not be listening. But I think a lot of us have felt that way. And I want to share that journey, where I was and how I got to where I am right now. So let me start with the beginning. When I was 19, I went to an ISEC leadership conference, and the facilitator, yeah, there's several of you there, the facilitator asked us to set goals that were measurable. So I decided at that time that by the age of 25, I wanted to have my own company. And by the time I got there, I was actually working at a corporate job, earning good money and traveling. So it was very hard to realize, oh my gosh, I'm 25 now, and I said I was going to have a business by the age of 25. So I started looking at opportunities, and actually with two fellow ISECers, one of them is actually here, we started a company. We decided to buy a franchise called World Sites. And you know, it was interesting because we all came from working at corporate jobs, making good money. And after like 3 years of being there, we found ourselves, or at least myself, but I'm sure them as well, making a lot less than what we were making before in the corporate job. And frustrated, trying to figure out what was happening, how do we make it work. It was what I call a hustle business, which means every time every month you're going out there trying to find new customers. And you know, some months are good, some months are not. But a lot of entrepreneurs are trapped in a hustle business. I didn't understand what it was back then. So I started figuring out, well, probably the three of us are not going to be able to live from this. Let's see what else is out there. And I found this opportunity that I had seen in Panama to create a corporate barter business. So I went to my partners and said, let's do this. I think it may be a good idea. They looked at it, we decided let's jump into it. At that time we actually needed more money, so we brought in more partners. And we started working really hard at it. But what happened is, I didn't realize back then it was a marketplace business. And in a marketplace business, you have to have critical mass of supply and demand, right? That business actually was very good for businesses that had inventory, excess inventory, and high margins. But we couldn't find enough, and we didn't make it. It didn't really take off for us. And then I run into this idea. Another friend of mine from ISEC, actually, who was in Norway, made an alliance with a Norwegian company that was distributing ringtones in Europe. And he said, what if we did it in Central America? So they had the servers. I had to contact the mobile phone operators, get the licenses from the music labels. And it's funny because I went to a friend of mine who I knew from university and worked for a telecom company, and she said, I hope you're not planning to live off this. And I was like, actually I was. But at that time, you know, it was very new. There was barely anything done here. But it took off. It took off really fast. And the beauty of that model was that it was a server that had the music. We basically distributed the pie. So a percentage went to the Norwegian company, a percentage went to the mobile phone operators, a percentage went to the music labels, and a percentage we kept. But it could grow, it could scale really fast. So we extended our business to all Central America and eventually even Peru and Dominican Republic. And it was a really good business. So I learned that your business models has a lot to do with how far you can get. That was a very important lesson. So make sure your goals match your business model, because you may be stuck in something that is not going to get you there. And in our case, we had to iterate a lot until we got there. It took us like 7 years. But at that time, I was very happy. I mean, and I actually finally qualified for EO. You saw an ad from EO. That was one of my goals as well. You know, I was enjoying that. And then, of course, things happened. I went to this conference in Aspen as part of the Central America Leadership Initiative. I'm a member of Cali. And I was talking to a friend of mine about next steps. And at that point, I was thinking the ringtone business is not going to last forever. I may start thinking about something else. In fact, the smartphones were already evolving, and I was thinking we may be needing to think about something else. So this guy, I met this guy who had a hat that said Acton MBA in entrepreneurship. And I was like, is an MBA really for entrepreneurs? And he started talking to me about this program that he had founded and what the promises were. The promises were learn how to learn how to make money, and learn how to live a life of meaning. And that really got to me. I was like, okay, this sounds like it's made for me. So I decided I'm going to jump to it. And I talked to my partners and decided I'm going to take a year off. We had good cash flows at that point, so I went through the program. And in that program, I was asking, what do you really want? What do I really want? I wasn't sure exactly what I really wanted. And at that point, I decided I want to specialize in healthcare and education. That's what I want to do moving forward. Now, it wasn't that easy because it meant maybe I need to change directions, right? And at that point, honestly, the timing was the worst possible, because in 2008, the economy tanked. I don't know if you remember that. I was in the middle of the MBA, and the economy went just like this. All of a sudden, our sales were like through the floor. You know, it was a crisis. It was the perfect storm, because the other factors were affecting us as well. The pressure from the mobile phone operators, from the music labels and all that. So that's when I was like, oh, I may have to make a change here. And it was not the right time, clearly, because we were at the bottom of it. But eventually I agreed with my partners that they would buy me out, and I was going to start from scratch and start again, right? Now, at this point, something happened that taught me probably one of the most important lessons I've learned in my life. Because when I was there at the peak, my self-esteem was really high, right? I was like, oh yeah, I'm worth a lot of money, I'm done this. But when I hit the bottom, when the economy tanked, when like I ended up selling for much less than I knew it was worth at some point, and eventually I actually ended up using all that money to invest in new businesses. So there was a point where I was like almost out of everything that I had done. And I was wondering, what have I done? What's going on here? And this is where I learned, your net worth is not your self-worth. And this is kind of a graph of how I felt in terms of self-esteem, my net worth, and my ability to create value. Now, eventually it took back up, and the graph probably is not good because it took back up exponentially. But what I realized is that what was important was my ability to create value. Not how much I had accumulated, but my ability to create value. And I had learned a ton. In the Acton MBA program, I learned a ton. So I decided I'm going to use what I know, and I'm going to start again, and I'm going to figure out how to make it work, and this time I'm going to make it better. So this is where it gets interesting. I decided that because in the previous 7 years, I had spent a lot of time trying to figure out the right business model, and one took off out of 3. So this time we said, I'm going to hedge my bets. And I told 2 of my classmates, why don't we start 3 businesses together and figure out which one takes off. And then we devote all our efforts into that one. Initially, it was kind of envisioned like a fund and investing in other startups, but it was really our ideas. So here's some of the lessons that I learned from that. Faster iteration, faster learning. We decided we're going to, at Acton we say fail cheap and fail fast. So that means let's just try it. If it doesn't work, we know the metrics and we discard quickly, right? Instead of spending so many years on this. The first lesson is be intentional about which customer you want to serve. And this is interesting because the first business that I launched in the US was a healthcare service for the Hispanic community. It was a nurse triage call center where you could subscribe via text message. I thought I was applying my knowledge with text messages. And for $5 a month, you would get access to a nurse and ask as many questions as you want. Everybody loved the idea, but it was not selling. It was not an impulsive sale like the ringtones. So I went to the flea market myself and sell it and talked to the customers, and I realized that they didn't want to pay for these things. In the US, if you go to the ER and don't have insurance, you get the services for free. So they use that as their primary care. It was not an intense need. And we figured quickly that the only way to make money was to get some government grants or stuff like that, and I didn't want to do that. So we said, okay, let's move on. 9 months, not a lot of money because we made a lot of the cost variable. Next lesson, you can't pick the right timing, but it's wise to avoid the rush hour. And I'm sure all of you who live in Guatemala will relate to that. But in business, what happened is I started thinking about the trend of the iPad games, and I decided to launch an iPad educational game. When we started working on the iPad game, the What's New section of the App Store would last 2 or 3 weeks. So your app would last 2 or 3 weeks. By the time we actually finished the game, it would last less than an hour. So it was so crowded that it was so much noise and so much competition that we just were we were invisible. And we realized how much money was required to really make that business take off. So again, the metrics we had learned at Acton, customer acquisition cost, lifetime value, let's move on. And most of these were started in parallel. But finally, I found the right combination of the business model and something that was a meaningful impact. And this was a service that allowed medical practices to communicate with their patients better via text message and allow them to identify which patients were at risk and make sure they were following their treatments. And the beauty of this model is that it's recurring revenue. So every month you add new customers, but you have the other ones. And if you have high retention, which we were fortunate to have, the business is growing really fast and the industry values that very high. They pay on a multiple of sales, not even a multiple of profit. So made it really attractive. All right, and this is where it gets to the point where, again, another decision-making time. We grow again, I qualify again for EO, things are going really well, and all of a sudden a company that we knew approaches us and says, we want to buy your company. And I spoke to my partner at that time. It was only 2 of us at that time because we had bought one out. We said, I don't know, this is not the right time. We have not reached our number yet. So let's keep going until we reach our number. So we said no. And we kept going, and we were enjoying it. We were learning a lot of things and growing. A year later, they come back to us and say, hey, we see you're growing. We want to buy you. And we said again, no, we're not interested. We need to reach our number. So a few months later, they come back to us and say, okay, what is your number? And I tell them, and they say, I'll pay it to you. So, oh, okay. Now we're talking, and now we're like in an interesting conversation because my business partner and I said, we sat down and we said, if we reach this number, we're going to pay. But we're having fun, and what are we going to do next? And I said, it doesn't matter. I mean, we can do so many things with this freedom. We should do it. But we did agree on a few things that we needed to negotiate, and I'm going to share a few lessons from that selling process. First of all, hiring an investment banker. We actually ended up not using an investment banker, but I had built a relationship with one who knew the industry, who had sold our competitors, and knew exactly the valuations and all of that. So when I got the offer, I reached out to him and I said, listen, I have this offer, what do you do? And he looked at it, he looked at the numbers, and he said, listen, this is a very good offer. I can probably create an auction process, and he even told me the potential buyers, but I don't think I'm going to get much more than this. And if you really like these buyers, which we did, then you should go for it. So I'm really grateful for that investment banker, but building the relationship from the beginning is important. Picking the right legal representation, when you're going through that process, it's very stressful, and the other firm had like a huge law firm. We decided to hire a big one, like the biggest one in Austin and really popular. And to be honest, the lesson learned there is, they were very good. I mean, and it was very tough at some point at the negotiations, but they were very good. However, I felt like we were small fish for them. They were used to dealing with like IPOs and SPACs and that thing. And for us, it was a life-changing thing, right? So we wanted that attention. So my lesson is like, make sure that matches, say, who you pick as your legal representation, so you're an important customer to them. Walking away. This was one of the advantages we had of not needing to sell at the point. And actually, we walked away twice during the negotiations because they tried to change the terms on us, and we're like, nope, if that's it, then we're gone. And it was super stressful because we were doing due diligence, we were working to still grow the company. I hadn't told the employees yet, only a few people knew it. But I felt comfortable walking away, and they came back, fortunately. And then ensuring a smooth transition. Like during the negotiation, for example, we have an office here in Antigua, and we said we want to make sure that that office stays, that those employees stay. We want to make sure our employees are taken care of. And we were able to put it as part of the negotiation and do the planning with them. So, what did I do after I sold? This is a very important point for me. I realized I had reached the milestone that I had been dreaming of, and I decided to give myself permission to wonder. That's how I called it. A year of not deciding anything, not starting something new immediately. I just wanted to explore. It was a hard thing to do because opportunities started coming up real fast. And they sounded attractive, and I tend to get excited about everything. So I was like, okay, yeah, this is cool. But what I did is I started writing down a criteria to what was it that I really wanted to do next. And this is what I want to share with you. And this criteria I came up after I realized what were the things that I liked the most about the ventures I saw, and the ones that I didn't like. And I said, if I'm going to spend my time in something, it has to be something worthwhile. So I want something that has worldwide reach. I'm from ISIC. I have a lot of friends around the world, and I want to reach people all around the world. I want something that helps other people make money. I want something that has potential for exponential growth. I really believe in exponential growth, and I know that it can be done, but the model has to allow for that. I have to be uniquely positioned to do it. That's super important to me because, I mean, there are so many good ideas that others can execute better. But I want something that I know that with everything I've built, I can execute better than others. It has to be a compelling need, something that makes me passionate because it is a need, a problem that needs to be solved. The customers have to be interesting to work with. I want to enjoy meeting with the customers and going to sales meetings and all that. I want to be able to hire people who are smarter than me, A players. I want to make sure that they're always around and I'm learning. I want to be in creative mode versus survival mode. I want to be in a position where I'm constantly using my creativity and creating value. I want to have flexibility of time and location, work from anywhere, and I want to be able to disconnect. I made a deal with my kids that I'm going to take them 1 month somewhere around the world every summer, and whatever I do, that's what I want to do. So to share with you, I have actually found that opportunity. I don't have enough time to share all of you, but it's called Team Logic, and you'll be hearing more from me. There's going to be a chapter 2. But what I can say about this one is it is probably the most meaningful work that I've created after I learned all of these things that happened in the past few years. And I do hope you find yours as well. My message is, it is there. We just have to find it, and we have to have very real criteria of what is going to make meaningful work to you. And of course, reach your number. Reach for the sky. Thank you.
Questions?
Judith. Sí. ¿En español o en inglés?
I'm going to practice my English. Congratulations, Hugo. I know your career, and it's really good to see you where you are right now. I wanted to ask you how you knew when they made the offer. I know you already said that you were in your number, right? But how did you knew that it was the best option to sell at that point to that person? Was there something like that you were trying to find? in the
Yes,
negotiation?
that's a very good question. First of all, I knew those guys for a long time. And one important thing that I didn't mention, it's important to always be networking and always be connected to those who may be your buyers. As I said, like investment bankers. I had networks with VCs and private equity. And these guys, I knew their track record. They were very good. So when they came, and I knew my company was a good fit for them. So when they came, I said, okay, this is right. And when they were willing to match the number up front, even though they negotiated some terms, to do some part of the payment as deferred payment. But I figure time is the ultimate currency. If I can do this now and they're going to pay me what I would make in 3 years, I might as well do it now. And if it's the right people, let's jump on it. And it's hard because I don't think you can ever say it's the perfect time. But you have to just see what things align. And in that case, it just felt like the right thing. Do you have time for any more questions?
See? Anybody else?
All right, one more here, I guess.
Hi. Partners, how are you able to manage the different expectations? Because you had your number, probably they had theirs. And how can you deal with different people having different numbers and knowing that you cannot do everything alone? So how do you manage that and try to make everyone happy?
That's a great question. And two of my partners who I started with are here, and they'll tell you it's not easy. And there are many times where you have different opinions and going in different direction. In my case, I always feel like I know my skill sets and what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. So I always find partners who complement my skills. That's what I try to do. But in terms of setting your goals, what helped me in the last venture that I sold is that we sat down in the coffee shop and we said, what is the number? We knew it. That's why when they came with the offer, we both agreed, if we reach this number, we will sell. And that's what made it easy. All right. I think that's it. Thank you very much.
One
Gracias.
more. Wait,
one more.
One more. One last one.
Oh, Carmen, she's asking, can I tell you about the new venture? All right, I'll be very brief. But so the new venture, we're building experiential learning assets. And I'm calling assets because it's things that we're going to create in the metaverse or with VR and AR. And our goal is to build the greatest and most valuable experiential learning assets the world has seen. There are many good things out there right now, but our goal is to build just an experience that will leave you at awe, but will make you learn. And we do it with collaboration. We do it in team building as well. And we're just starting. I mean, we're starting to iterate and build a few things here and there. And one of our commitments is we're not this time, and we have the privilege of not having to rush to sell the first dollar. So our commitment is we're going to do only things that align with our vision. And if that means waiting a little longer, we will. We still will have the discipline to hustle, because that's super important, but only if it's aligned with the vision. Does that answer the question? Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody.